Good to see everybody today. And what we're doing, and what kind of spurred this on is about I guess probably now about a month and a half ago, one of our A team members who helped us to establish our standards and accreditation process. He's a professor at UVA, and he invited me to come on to one of his classes that was being done online, of course, and just talk about the National Inclusion Project, talk about inclusion kind of 101, if you will, the basic foundational level. And so I know a lot of people in video here are pretty familiar with what we do, and in a lot of ways pretty familiar with inclusion in general. However, we are recording this to go out to a larger audience, so that's one of the reasons why we're doing this too. But we just felt like that it'd be really good, obviously, if folks are out there, number one, from their own personal support, to have a real definite idea of kind of where we're headed as an organization, what we do on a regular basis, how we actually support programs. I'm pretty sure that if you just asked if you kind of went down our donor list and asked, like, what does the National Inclusion Project do? I'm pretty sure you'd get a wide variety of answers and stuff. So hopefully this will clear it up a little bit. We are in a major evolution in our organization, and it really has nothing to do with the time the season we're in right now. It really has to do with the fact we were already there prior to shelter in place and all these kind of things that have come out. And what's cool about it is that we've actually been able to add some things into our repertoire that we weren't doing, before, that fit right along with the evolution of what we're doing as an organization. And so what I want to do first is I actually want to start with a video, and I'm just hoping and praying this plays through. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to play this video. Again, some of you may have seen this video before, but since this is Inclusion 101, I thought it would be good to start with our Inclusion 101 video that we have on our website that talks about what inclusion is, and then I'll unpack that a little bit and talk a little bit more about how we practically move forward with that. And so while the video is playing, if you could mute yourself, and that way it stays, it'll not provide any feedback or anything while the video is playing, that would be great, and then we'll go from there. So here we go.
Meet Jack and Ashley, field trip buddies, which may not seem like a big deal at first, until you know Jack's story. Jack was diagnosed with autism at age 3. From then, he spent most of his time with his mom, in therapies and in self-contained classrooms. At age 8, Jack's mom brought him to an inclusive program that was partnered with and trained by the National Inclusion Project. At first, Jack spent more time with his counselors than his peers, but eventually, and even took interest in some of the electives that were offered. The next summer on a field trip, Jack was partnered with Ashley, and they stayed together for the entire field trip. This was the first time he had made a meaningful peer-to-peer connection. When Mom came to pick him up, the staff excitedly told her what had happened. She began to tear up and told the staff, "Ever since Jack was diagnosed, I have had so many people tell me all the things he was never going to be able to do. Go to a regular school, play sports, be in a band or play or club, leave home to go to college, etc. To me, this looks like a list of all the things that the other kids do to make friends. I have wondered for years now if Jack would ever make a friend. I know it's just a buddy on a field trip, but this is the first time in 6 years that I have some evidence that he can make friends, and other kids want to be my son's friend." You have the same opportunity to make an impact on children like Jack and their families. Welcome. We at the National Inclusion Project are excited you're here. To get you started, let's go through some of the basics about inclusion philosophy, beliefs, and attitudes. We encourage you to keep things simple. After all, simple does not always mean easy. Inclusion takes effort and creativity at a high level. However, the philosophy, beliefs, and attitudes that lay the foundation are simple. Let's start with philosophy, which is really how you come to define inclusion. Inclusion is simply assuring that all people have the same opportunity, to create meaningful experiences and build meaningful relationships. Definition in mind, let's talk about 3 core beliefs that have helped lots of folks like you work successfully in inclusive programs. First, every child can make a friend. Yes, even those children that come into your program with less social skills, a chip on their shoulder, or a less than friendly attitude. We've never met anyone who believes that there are other children out there who are destined to be lonely and friendless. Secondly, every child can participate, regardless of ability level. With enough creativity, any child that wants to participate should have the opportunity to participate in a meaningful way. Lastly, every child can be successful. That's because we believe that success for the child, and even for you, is simply a step forward. Now that we have core beliefs established, we'd like to ask you 2 questions to help you reflect on your attitude. Answering these questions before you begin training and working will help you to know what to focus on at the start. What makes you nervous about working in an inclusive environment with children with and without disabilities? What makes you excited about bringing children with and without disabilities together in an inclusive environment? If you are like most, you have things you are both nervous and excited about. Knowing these things will help you know where you might need more training and where you will be able to contribute to making an impact. We've now taken a few minutes to talk through the basics of inclusion philosophy, beliefs, and attitudes that we feel will help you be successful as you embark with your program. Certainly, additional training will follow. As you go through this training, remember, there will be some things you can do right away. There are some things you'll need extra training on. There are some things that you'll be asked to be a part of to help change your organization. There are some things that will require you to change. As you learn more, we encourage you to remember what Maya Angelou said. Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. We look forward to seeing you again as you continue your journey towards successful inclusion.
All right. So with that video to kind of establish the way, and just so you know, for practical purposes, if you'd ever like to share that video, if you go to our website and go under Programs and Professionals, click Inclusion Training, it's the first little blurb, and all anybody has to do is submit their email to get access to the video. That email, we don't put that on our newsletter list. They're not all of a sudden going to get 800 emails from us. It's very simply so we can kind of track a little bit about who the people are watching the video. And then we also do send them a survey for feedback on the video specifically, and that's the extent of our communication with them. If they do get the video. So if you ever have anybody that wants to know exactly what you're all about, you keep telling me about this National Inclusion Project thing, you keep telling me about inclusion, what does it all mean? That's a great place to start because it just, again, lays the basics of what we do. So, and really what it boils down to is that definition of inclusion and what that is, and then also those 3 core beliefs and what we're all about and what we've based everything we've really done from the very beginning, especially as we begin to get into the development of our Let's All Play program. It's really defined, who we are as an organization and what we're after. And it was and one of the things to make sure we're very clear on is just the fact that while we do believe that inclusion is all people, I think in the practical application of that, where we focus, of course, is on children with and without disabilities specifically, and the training and things that we go center around that. Although the principles we use to talk about social inclusion really can be universally applied across really any demographic. So we're excited about that. And I've recently been reading a book called The Infinite Game, and it's a great book, and it's essentially talking about having a cause that actually doesn't end, that it doesn't, that it's not, we talk a lot of times in terms of like winnable games, something we can win, something we can accomplish, something we can do. And I think one of the things that's been a challenge for us is looking at what we do and going, my gosh, there are a lot of programs. Several years ago, we kind of did just a kind of a cursory survey over ACA accredited programs, and ACA is the American Camping Association. They're kind of the umbrella of training and organization over camps, specifically camps, summer camps, day camps, overnight camps, not really after school programs and things, but camps. And it was something in it was like 11% of ACA accredited camps offered services for children with disabilities. And that number actually included camps that were specifically for children with disabilities. Number of inclusive programs was actually lower than that. And that's when we began to get an idea that we had to change our model, because, of course, when we first got started, we spent 4 years in development of Let's All Play, where we could go in and support programs through some grant funding and some training and some hands-on consultation. And we became very sold out to the partnership model of what we do, that we didn't want to be an organization that just wrote a check or just did a training and then kind of went back into our offices and said, man, we hope all that works. Tell us how you did after you're finished. We never wanted to be that organization. We truly want to partner with folks. We want to engage with communities, engage with organizations in order to make inclusion a reality for those communities. But, we would, when we got into Let's All Play, we would take on, 10, 15, programs a year that we would get very involved with. And the joke kind of around our organization became, man, it's going to be really great in the year like 2350 when we finally partner with all the programs that are out there that are to be partnered with. Because when you're only taking on 10 at a time, in a world where there are thousands of programs that are working with kids, you tend to feel very overwhelmed, and that's when we made a pivot, and that's when we understood that what our strength really was is that we as an organization figured out early on that there have actually been people who've been doing inclusion and doing it well for many, many years. There's one camp in particular we work with that's been doing really good inclusion in a residential camp setting for over 40 years now. They celebrated their 40th year as an inclusive camp several summers ago. And so one of the things you have to ask, though, is that if you've got programs like that out there, why in 2020 are we still talking about inclusion as a revolutionary idea? Or if you go back farther, why in 2010 when we were still getting ramped up into working, with some programs, why was it such a revolutionary idea for so many people to consider that? And what it boiled down to is all of these programs that were doing inclusion were doing them in little pockets here and there. They had little dots on the map with no connection between the dots. So essentially what would happen is when an organization would step up to do inclusion, they would have to go through the exact same trial and error that other programs had gone through years before them. They would hit the same potholes on the road. And if only we had a system where we could say, hey, there's a pothole coming up, you might want to swerve to the left and miss it. And that's what we understood, that that became the strength of our organization, was to learn from other people, gather that information in one spot, and then be able to disperse that to other folks so they didn't have to go through the same trial and error. I'm a big believer that experience is a great teacher, but a lot of times what you hear is experience is the best teacher. I don't agree with that. I think other people's experience is a way better teacher, because that allows us to save time and money and heartache and blood, sweat, and tears when we can learn from other people and accelerate the process. The other thing that happens with inclusion when you have it going on in different pockets is everybody is saying the same thing, but they're using different words, so it doesn't sound like they're saying the same thing. So it'd be very much if you lined 5 speakers up who all spoke different languages and you gave them the same sentence to read, but they all read it in their language at the same time, it would be chaos and confusion. So nobody really knew what people were talking about. And so what we've been able to do is take this information and hopefully at least give a handful of folks some common language to navigate this journey through inclusion with. And so with that being said, we've evolved now, and now as an organization, what we are mainly focused on is our training, our standards, and our accreditation. The education piece of what we do is so powerful because for most people, money is always an issue for every nonprofit. So that's never a thing. It's like, people are like, well, money's the issue. Money's always the issue. All right. That's never going away. People are going to rely on money in order to run any program they run, whether they're being inclusive or not. So not having enough money is not, in fact, Gary Sipperstein, our former board member, I remember very clearly, he keynoted one of our Power Play experiences, and he got so exasperated saying this, he actually had to sit down. And he said, if anyone is using money as an excuse not to do inclusion, it's a cop-out. They don't really want to do it in the first place if that's what they're saying. And so we found that it's not really the financial piece. And in fact, in a lot of ways, when people move to inclusion, they find that their bottom line improves. They find that they're serving more people. They find that it's actually cheaper to do it because they're not putting out little fires all over the place with staff and kids and families and everything, because they're proactively prepared to run a better program when they are focused on including everyone. And so that's not really the issue. So we've pivoted to that whole idea of having a list of standards that provides benchmarks for people. It provides an opportunity for programs to assess themselves and to say, hey, how are we really doing? And it's a very different list of standards. If you go to ACA and you look at their standards for camp, a lot of them have to do with, safety and liability things. Do you have enough life jackets? Are the bunk beds, the right height? Are there enough space between certain things? Like, those are the standards. Our standards are our children becoming friends, like our children learning things like social responsibility. Are there people in place that have a level of expertise in order to help include children? So it's a very different list of standards, but it's equally important to the safety things, because it's about the people they're serving, not about the equipment they're serving the people with. And so we're excited about our standards. We're excited about having a guiding list of principles. We're excited about the process that we went through to do it, even though, as Nick will tell you, it took way longer than we ever thought it was going to establish this list of standards. We thought we were going to get together for a couple meetings. We're going to have this brilliant exchange of ideas, and boom, there was going to be a list, and we were going to be able to proceed. And what happened was, no, we need this group to vet it. We need this group to vet it. And I would dare say that there are very few documents out there that have been vetted more than our list of inclusive standards by as many people as we possibly get their hands on them. So we love that. We love the fact that we're in the position now to accredit programs. Now, we're pressing pause on that for this summer, just basically because of how different this summer is going to be. We're more concerned about camps just opening and serving children successfully and serving kids virtually successfully, however they're going to do that, more so than we're worried about them trying to go through an official process of accreditation. But we're excited about the opportunity to accredit programs and validate the work they're doing in serving their communities. I think that's a really exciting place for us to be. And then we're also excited about some of the things that we're doing with training, doing virtual trainings, doing an online training hub where people have access to it. Even, I'm kind of excited that people are going to be able to get trained by myself and Amanda and some of the other experts that we have at our disposal, sometimes maybe even while I'm sleeping. That's fantastic. I've never been able to train folks while sleeping before, but now we're going to have the opportunity to do that. So we've evolved as an organization, but 3 core beliefs have defined what we've done from the very beginning. All right. And these came out of the process of developing Let's All Play, but even when we look back through the process of what we did, it really became clear that even then we were following these beliefs. And they're so simple. Number 1, every child can make a friend. Every child can make a friend. And like the video said, that's an either or. There's not I'm not into this whole thing where there's, it's never as simple as people make it. But in this case, it's as simple as we're making it. Either you believe that kids can make friends, or you believe that there's a kid out there that was born destined to be miserable and lonely. And I just don't believe that. I've never met anyone that believes that. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that every child will have a friend. that's always a possibility when you bring kids together. And in fact, when we train programs on helping children, make friends, we don't even talk to them about helping them make friends. We talk to them about helping them make connections, because as the program provider, as the counselor, as that can be my only responsibility in a relationship between two other people. If I'm trying to match make, I'm just meddling, okay? So all I can do is I can create an environment that is healthy, and it creates healthy, positive social interactions and connections so that they can bring the people together. And one of the biggest things for that is establishing similarities before we dive into the beauty of our differences. Because until we create a connection, the differences don't look beautiful, they look scary. All right. There's a statement I use in our trainings all the time that says, differences without connection keep us apart. Differences with connections make things interesting. And again, it's not about talking about the similarities so much that we ignore the differences. There are differences. But this was forever driven home for me when I was at the FPG Inclusion Institute here in Chapel Hill. It's a preschool conference that's been going on for years and years and years, and we presented that annually now for this will be like the 11th or 12th year in a row that we presented this conference. And but it's always fun. It's always me and a lot of ladies in the room, to be honest with you, because they're all preschool teachers. So I kind of sometimes uniquely call this conference me and the ladies. But we were doing an activity where we actually have groups come and they share similarities, and eventually they form a group of 8, and that group of 8 has one thing they have in common that they've talked about. Okay, some of you've actually done this activity with me at various things that we've done throughout the years, but you have that one thing in common. I will forever remember the next activity I do out of that is in that circle of 8. People say, my name is, and they say their name, and they say, I'm special because, and they say something that makes them unique, some difference that they have. And so this one girl stood up and she said, my name is Jessica, and I'm special because, and I can't do it, but she basically turned around and she essentially unhinged her shoulder blades, and they looked like they were going to pop out of her back like pterodactyl wings. And it was amazing. It was wild. And what was amazing about it is every time I've told that story to other people, there have been at least 1 or 2 people that have kind of had this like, oh, kind of reaction thinking about it, right? And then people outside of her circle in that room did the same thing. They looked over and saw her doing that, and they were like, whoa, like, what is she doing? Everybody in her circle clapped and said, that is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. All right. And they had literally just connected 3 minutes before that, probably around liking ice cream. Like that was probably how simple the similarity was, but they connected through that. And it was an incredibly powerful moment. So what happens is that when we operate with the belief that everyone can make a friend, we create a healthy environment so those connections happen. So sometimes those things that are like, oh, become, oh, cool. I had another experience one time. I was actually working with a Child 101, not in our programs, actually outside of our program, just volunteering my time. And this child had oppositional defiance disorder. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to incredibly simplify it for you. Basically, if you realize that no toddler likes to be told no, all right, multiply that by infinity and add aggression. Okay, and that's what at least this child was dealing with oppositional defiance disorder. And I remember you would be fine, and then all of a sudden you would say something, and it would trigger him, and he would be aggressive. And now he was not aggressive to other children, just to the authority figures, and that's actually part of that, just the authority figures in his life. And so I was that figure for a while. What happened is that he brought a friend to the program one time. And I said something, and that was the other thing. There was no pattern. There was nothing I could figure out that like did it. There would just be one thing pretty much every day that I would say something and it would trigger him. But I said something, it triggered him. He was going after me, and I was kind of holding him at bay. And I just had this kind of almost like out of body experience. And I looked over at his friend, and I said, what do you think about this? Literally while I'm in the middle of the scenario, I was like, what do you think about this? And he goes, he'll calm down in a minute. And like, that was it. And it was just, they were friends. So that was just part of who he was. And he figured it out and they navigated it. And that was all there was to it and stuff. So that first belief, everyone can make a friend, fairly simple. But making sure, being conscious of the belief allows you to create an environment where, you know, kids have the chance to connect in a really positive way. All right. Second belief, every child can participate. Now, this is one where there are people who don't believe this. There are people who don't believe that every child can participate, or they believe that they will have to change so many core fundamentals about their program that that it just makes it hard for them to wrap their brain around, you know, doing that. And so the point there is, though, is just if you believe that every child can participate, all right, you're going to be more creative in what you come up with in order for every child to participate. And here's what I will tell you. And when I tell programs that we train, just because you believe it doesn't mean they will, right? Sometimes kids are going to be tired. They're going to be grumpy. They're going to be defiant. They're not going to participate. And you know what? Sometimes your activities are going to stink, and they have every right to not participate because they're not a very good activity. And I used to do that. Nick will tell you, you know, that was literally my job working summer camp at the YMCA, was planning activities and supervising the staff that planned activities. And I will tell you that every activity we planned, we thought was the best activity that had ever been planned. And then when we actually played it and got off of paper and actually into action, we realized that it really wasn't that great of an activity. And so we realized why kids weren't super excited to play the activity. But the point is that when you believe that every child can participate, you will delve into the activity planning, and you will make sure that you're not necessarily creating barriers for children to participate. The other thing about that is that, and we had a keynote speaker come to our conference a couple of years ago, our Power of Play conference, and she was actually part of the Microsoft Inclusive Design team. And what's cool about what she did was she was talking about a lot of technology design, but it really was just design in general, activity design, program design, whatever. And her thing was design for one, expand to all. Design for one, expand to all. So when you're looking at your group and you're planning an activity and you're like, man, you know, how, you know, this one child might need a buddy to participate in this activity successfully. Okay, cool. Why not just make it a partner activity for everyone? Then everyone grabs a partner, everyone participates successfully, everyone has more fun. You might create more connections in that regard. And so why not just do it that way? Okay, man, this child would benefit in this activity more if we used a different piece of equipment. Well, what you'll find is there's probably kids you're not thinking about that you just found a better way for them to participate also, you know? So when you're playing volleyball, instead of a kid getting tattooed with a leather ball, you know, so that was hit too hard by somebody that was trying to show off how athletic they were, what if you threw a balloon in there and now everybody has the ability to participate and to be there? And the cool thing about it is it doesn't mean you have to take away competition. Sometimes people feel like that to do inclusion well, that all of your activities have to be, you know, cooperative, hold hands and sing around the fire activities. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you know, there are plenty of kids with disabilities who are super competitive, and you are going to bore them to tears if every activity you have is this cooperative, you know, team building, like rah activity that you want to do. And so we want to make sure that we have the ability to play games and have fun and teach lessons and do all the things that we want to do, you know, and you know, but have the opportunity that everybody gets a chance to participate. Okay. The number one rule for that is make sure your activities keep children engaged all the way through the activities. Because I've never seen a child disengage from an activity, like they get out of a dodgeball game and go sit down. I've never seen a child do that and go, man, while I'm sitting here, maybe I should pick up trash. You know, like that's not what kids do when they get disengaged. They get bored and they figure out other things to do, which are typically not the things you want them to do. So keeping children engaged is a way to keep them participating. All right. The last belief is this, and that is every child can be successful. All right. I used to coach cross country and track, so I think in running metaphors all the time. That's what I do. All right. But everybody has at least seen a race. So think about like the last Olympics, you were watching the track and field event. All right. When people line up on the track to run a track event, everyone has the same finish line. Okay, that's the metric that says these people have been successful. Okay, The reason they can have the same finish line, though, is because every one of them has the same starting line. And that's important to remember. The reason that they can have the same finish line is because they all start at the same starting line. Well, as human beings in life, we don't all start at the same starting line. So establishing some arbitrary finish line that everybody has to cross in order to be considered successful, that's not fair. It's not fair, and it doesn't create a positive experience for some. So it would be like, for example, having, a race on a track, and you've got one kid at the starting line, you've got one kid already 200 meters into the race, and you've got one kid who hasn't even put their shoes on yet. And yet you shoot off the gun and tell them there's one finish line that they all have to cross. Well, the one that started at the regular starting line, they're going to be the one that gives you no problems, because they're going to go around the track, they're going to hit the finish line, and they're going to feel like they accomplished something. The kid that was already 200 meters, they're going to accomplish the finish line so fast, and they're not going to be challenged to do anything else, that's going to be your bored kid that ends up making some really wild decisions, and you end up having an issue there. And then you also have the child without shoes on that's off the track. And by the way, notice I'm not saying anything about which one of those has a disability or not, because it will vary between activities with this metaphor, all right? But you have a child without shoes on, why should they even put their shoes on? They're going to be so disengaged and so not wanting to try, because there's no way they know that they're going to be able to hit that finish line in the time frame you've established. So the point is that what success is it's stepping forward. Okay. And by the way, sometimes success is stepping backwards to step forwards. So sometimes it's to fail. And I think that's something our programs have an incredible responsibility to teach kids, is that in the mistakes they learn. It's the try, fail, adjust, model that we learn, which sometimes in schools is hard to help kids wrap their brains around, because when you're getting grades and stuff, it feels like you're going the opposite direction when you're not passing or, being successful. So anyway, so those are our three core beliefs. Everyone can make a friend, everyone can participate, and everyone can be successful. That's what it is. So when we go into thinking about our standards, if you look through our standards, if you look through, when programs get into the accreditation process and they have the criteria, when you look at our training and education, every single training standard, et cetera, that we have at least has one of those beliefs at the forefront of what they do, because it's very, very important. What we found is the people that believe inclusion is going to work, it works. And people who don't believe it's going to work, it doesn't work. It's kind of amazing how that works with, in life in general, but especially for inclusion. All right. So the next thing I want to do is, and this will be kind of the wrap of my part, and then we'll have an opportunity for people to, ask some questions. And I know Nick is going to wrap up for us and stuff. But I recently did, and some of you've seen this, but if you haven't, this will be a great opportunity for you. But some of you have seen the interview I did with Diane Bubel, who's one of our co-founders, all right? I'm only going to show a clip of the video, so I'll tell Diane's background a little bit. But Diane is a mom in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. She has two children who are 11 months apart. Now, I have two children that are 14 months apart, and I know how intense that was, and she ramped that up by 3 months. But one child is typically developing, and one child has autism. They're both adults now. They were children whenever this organization got started. It's kind of hard to believe, honestly, but basically, Diane has basically spent the last 20, 30 years of her life doing inclusion in her home. And of course, Clay Aiken, our other co-founder, came in as a paraprofessional with Mike and helped out, and they began to click on certain things. And when American Idol happened and Clay began to have the platform to really make an influence, they started this organization together, and they've remained incredibly dedicated to the vision and mission that we have to make sure that kids all over, in every community have an opportunity to participate in the programs that are there. And so I did this interview with Diane, and the funny thing about Diane is she always says, Aaron, I'm not a professional speaker, and I'm not this, and I'm not that. And I'm like, yes, Diane. And that's exactly why people love you, because they trust you, because everything you say is very authentic. It's very real, and it's very powerful. And so I want you to hear, from her, not necessarily as the co-founder of organization, but as a parent who looks at our organization and goes, man, if an organization like this existed when my children were growing up, what a difference it would have made. And by the way, kudos to Diane, because she was pretty much out of the child game by the time this organization started. And yet she still dedicated her life to saying, I'd like other families to have a different experience than the one that I had. And that's a very admirable and noble trait that she exhibits here. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and I'm going to play this clip of the video, and we'll see. Oops, wrong thing here. To share. Here we go.
I know with me, getting outside of the family was important because community is so important. What I knew from the start is both my children were going to grow up and be out there. So being out there means community is really important. And in order to get Mike out there, I needed choices. I needed, as a parent, to have things available to him where he was welcome and felt like he belonged. And I think what we're doing with the Inclusion Project is we are partnering and assisting already existing programs to offer this to other families, which is so critical and important. I think these programs have always wanted to do this. I have this great belief that if you have a children's program, you have always wanted to include all children. There's always the fear that you can't do it. There's a reluctance to, if I can't do it right, I'm not even going to take the step. And I think we as parents who have kids that are different, we accept, well, I'd like to believe most of us accept the belief that things aren't going to be perfect. But if you let us through the door, we'll work together to make it work. I think what we are doing and what I'm so proud of with the National Inclusion Project is we're also we're creating a vehicle for these organizations to network and get together and work together, not as their own little small community, but the wider community. I know for me, when I was in our journey with my children, one of the first things and the thing I always suggest to people is you must reach out to others. You must educate yourself, first of all, and see how to handle things. But even more important to me personally is that connection with other, in my case, mothers, who are also trying to raise their family. But with the foundation, we are helping to not only train, but put together this network where we all work together and we share. We don't want to create the way things are done. We want to share and take off of what these great programs are doing. And we want to help each other keep going the next step. And our expectations have to be reasonable. And I think when you reach out to other organizations, you find that from your trials of doing things, you learn so much more, and you work together to get this thing going in a way that helps all the children and the families. Because when it comes down to it, including children with disabilities, you know how to do that because you know how to include children, and every child's different. I know when I was visiting some of our camps early on, it was interesting to me that sometimes there were difficulties with the typical children, and some of the kids with the disabilities were just doing fine. It's not always a given that these kids who have a disability are going to be your problem. All kids are a problem, and it's okay because that you get to know them, you work through it. I think now, in the years that we've been doing this, we have found so much change and acceptance that there is such a strong core of programs out there that really want to do this and they want to do it well. And I hope we, at the foundation, at the National Inclusion Project, can be that vehicle to not only help them gather together and network, but also provide them with tools that will be helpful to bring them to the next level. So, I mean, that's a lot of what I'm proud of.
So, like I said, nobody says it better than Diane, and about what we're about and what we're hoping to and what we hope to accomplish. So, what I'd love to do right now is, we've got about 5-10 minutes to, do any questions specifically, about what we do, about what we're about, anything at all that would pertain to 101. And so if you have one, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, and we'll go from there. Anyone?
Quick question, not sure that it pertains, Aaron. Has there been a decision yet as to what's happening with Power of Play this year? Because I really enjoyed getting together with the other, with some of the camp people last year.
Yes. So there are decisions on the table, but nothing final has been decided. So we are exploring options. Yeah, we still have a couple live options on the table. We most definitely will do some type of virtual option, and we will have that decision sooner rather than later because people have to begin making plans for what they're going to be doing in the next handful of months. So,
right.
Thanks for the question. Anybody else? All right, well, Nick, I'll turn it over to you, and you can close us out, and we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, so I don't really have much of substance to add. Aaron and Amanda and Tanya are our substance people. I just provide the filler at the end and in the beginning sometimes. But, perhaps you guys have recognized over the past few weeks and even in the coming weeks that, we have made an intentional shift or effort to the education piece of not just, the traditional program partners as you guys have come to know them, but also yourselves in many ways. Our ability to kind of get this information into the hands of the people that need it really is increased immensely when we empower the folks who care about our organization and care about inclusion to be able to also effectively describe, our process and the types of resources and opportunities that we've developed for folks who do want to pursue that, whether it's for personal benefit or professional benefit. So, I mean, you guys just sort of, in a way, sitting here listening to Aaron is kind of the first step in that. Admittedly, most of the people, if not everybody on this call, already had sort of a good working understanding of who we are, what we do, and, what we try to do to accomplish our mission. But, one of the challenges that we've had really forever is making sure that the people who need to know that information actually have it. And we get it into their hands. And, Aaron and Amanda and Tanya are very good at managing the relationships that we are able to create either organically or, through some of our current program partners. But what we're hoping for is for that bucket, so to speak, to get a lot bigger. And, so it's kind of a multi-step process in us making sure that, folks like yourself are very well educated on, who we are and what we do, that kind of thing, so that you can feel empowered and you can feel competent in, sharing that information, with anybody, really, if it's friends, if it's colleagues, or if it actually is, program providers in your local community that you think can benefit from having this information. As Aaron mentioned, there is an increase. There currently is an increase, and there will continue to be an increase in the ways in which programs can work with us, and we can partner with programs that, don't always require me putting Aaron on a plane or Amanda on a plane and them, doing that traditional on-site service. While there is a lot of benefit that cannot be replaced in doing that, we also have noticed that, there are ways in which we can continue to have an impact during, kind of pandemic times, and not even pandemic times, but also just moving forward. This is kind of one of those opportunities where we've, in a way, been really forced to look at how we're delivering some of these things and how we're developing some of these things. And we might have sort of had an aha moment here because of that. And again, hopefully you guys don't mind being a part of that aha moment and that the solution to that aha moment, because that's really how we see this. Again, as Aaron, offered, a number of times throughout his presentation, get in there. If you have questions, if you want to, do a little bit of a back and forth, that's where the learning comes. Aaron has spent time in the classroom. I've spent time in the classroom. Casey has, Martha has, and, Lori, Sue, or Devin, if any of you have, then I'm sorry I forgot you, but you guys know how this goes. There's a process that you sort of have to walk. And the first one is just informing ourselves and getting that education, that foundation of education in place. And then your happiness and your willingness to have these conversations with, some of the other folks that need it just goes through the roof. You just feel way more confident. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do here. So thank you, for entertaining us, and also for sort of, making that commitment yourself. It's really important. And thankfully everybody's had a little bit of extra time on their hands to kind of sit in front of their computer and do these kinds of things. And that's one of the happy aha sort of things that maybe we've noticed. So, again, not much substance there, a lot of filler, but hopefully you guys sort of have a good understanding of what our goals are here and the strategies that we're using. It really is to sort of, empower you guys in many ways to kind of help us achieve our mission. So I'll put a pin in it there. I think that's probably enough. I don't know if I see Tanya's screen is blank. I don't even know if we have her anymore. So Aaron, I don't know if you have any final thoughts or if anybody has a question or two, but I think that's a good stopping point.
For sure. We appreciate you all logging in today, and thank you for your continued support, and just thank you for the willingness to come on and just learn a little bit more. Just like Nick said, I think that's super important, and we just appreciate the opportunity to share and share about things we love doing. So y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'm sure we will see you all very soon.